Right, your time now is 2 p.m. and this is the Tuesday edition of Market View right here on Eswatini TV. I am Nathalisa Tole, glad to be your host this afternoon. Our focus today is public procurement. From infrastructure projects to essential services, procurement is at the heart of national development. But it is also one of the most vulnerable spaces when it comes to inefficiency and mismanagement. The good news is there is a push towards simpler solutions, including the introduction of a public procurement data collection tool. This is a system that is expected to transform how procurement data is captured and analyzed across government entities. At the same time, the Eswatini Public Procurement Regulatory Agency has issued a notice reinforcing the criminal provisions of the Procurement Act of 2011. The key message is non-compliance in procurement processes will not be tolerated. From the practicality of a new data system to enforcement of the Procurement Act, stay tuned for a conversation with the agency on these developments. But first, our business stories. And in our business stories, we begin with this. Standard Bank Eswatini has partnered with the Swaziland National Association of Teachers, Saving and Credit Cooperative Society to bring UNAI services to their about 18,000 members. Standard Bank Chief Executive Officer Mvusele Lufaguse says this is to ensure financial inclusion.
This allows them to to be able to access their loans at the comfort of their own homes without having to come here to make applications for loans or to receive their money. So the purpose of this meeting today was really to launch that commemorative milestone that SNAT and Standard Bank have come together to partner on for the benefit of their members and their families.
SNAT SACCO's Chief Executive Officer Boise Dlamini says members will be able to receive 4,000 emalangeni in this first phase of the partnership, but they are working on increasing the limit to 20,000 emalangeni.
The intention of this partnership is to assist members withdraw monies in their accounts with the cooperative and further enable them to receive proceeds of disbursements from credit facilities that they would have applied for. In essence, it is meant to make life for our members simpler, easier and faster.
Employees of the SACCO say this is a relief to them as they will be able to assist their members with ease.
Ngicabanga ukuthi partnership itaba melula kakhulu itakwenda inconvenience nekuthi lilunga likhona nalifikile likhona le customer experience ibe melula kuye ngoba le mali utasheshe ayithole.
Since sinathi sekahlangane na Standard Bank unayo emalunga efu sekatositakala kangcono.
The client base yethu le malunga efu everywhere. So this gives us an advantage kithine as a SACCO ukuthi sikhona ukuservice emalunga ethu wherever they are ngalesikhathi lesiconvenient kibo.
The SNAT SACCO has about 18,000 members. Reporting Nelson Dlangamandla, Manzini.
The COMESA Competition and Consumer Commission, through its Chief Executive Officer Dr. Willard Mwemba, has issued a strong warning about the risk of price fixing and other anti-competitive practices in the COMESA region amid the ongoing crisis in the Middle East. The Commission says while global supply chain disruptions are pushing costs higher, there is growing concern that some businesses may take advantage of the situation by artificially inflating prices, hoarding goods or colluding, putting even more pressure on consumers. The warning comes as many households are already struggling with the high cost of living, making any form of price manipulation poses a serious threat to economic stability and consumer protection. But how real is this risk locally, and what should consumers and regulators be watching out for? Economist Annelies Beer joins us now to unpack what this could mean for pricing in Eswatini. Mr. Beer, good afternoon. We are seeing you earlier than usual today. From your perspective, how real is the risk of price fixing, hoarding, or collusion among businesses in Eswatini during crisis as such?
Good afternoon, Notsile, and a good afternoon to the viewers. So what we looking at right now is, in business, you always want to make money. So the current and prevailing situation does present an opportunity for businesses to actually, collude in terms of price fixing, and also collude in terms of, antitrust, such antitrust behaviors, which include, amongst others, the issue of artificially increasing the price. So the conditions allow for that purely because we are in a situation where everyone is expecting the prices to increase purely due to the supply shock disruptions, and also due to the ongoing war in terms of fertilizer prices, in terms of the price of Brent crude. So everyone is bracing for impact. So it does present a situation for businesses to actually implement it before the cost pressures even come on board.
What would you say are some of the key signs that consumers should be on the lookout for to identify unfair pricing or other uncompetitive behavior during this period?
I usually say the best method to look out for anti-competitive behavior is when you're now looking across and doing your shopping from entity to entity. You find that the prices are relatively the same. Ideally, different entities are not supplied by one person, and they have their margin and pricing strategies. So when you start seeing that the price of, say, cooking oil is relatively the same across all shops, now that does show two signs of collusion amongst, the entities, some sort of cartel behavior where they're all working in concert instead of competing with one another. So that's one of the telltale signs. Secondly, it could be an issue of saying, let's just listen and let's look at where things are coming from. Know your supplier. If your supplier largely sources locally and regionally, so right now it's not yet the time to panic, because commodities in South Africa and commodities in Eswatini, fuel is one of those what we call administered prices. So if you are starting to see that already now things are shifting even for locally grown consumers, originally grown commodities, now that's another telltale sign to say that businesses are now shifting before you even see a shift in the pricing. And also, how shocks are transmitted in the economy. They are never this instant, more especially in our economy. And producers are not always going to pass on the cost immediately. They'll try to find ways of doing just managing that. So you ideally expect to see that mid-second month towards the longer term. But in the short term, once you start seeing those prices changing very swiftly, then it's a sign that the consumer or the producer is actually prefixing prices and taking advantage of the news.
Mr. Spear, the statement or a notice by COMESA acknowledges that some anti-competitive coordination may be conditionally allowed during such periods. What would you say are the economic risks of this approach, and how then can governments or regulators prevent temporary exemptions versus entrenching long-term cartel behavior?
So with that, during times of upheavals and supply shocks, you do understand that the situation of allowing the market to continue as it would may actually lead us to a worse off situation compared to when you allow them to act in concert and do combined sourcing and try to find ways of managing the price. So this is done to actually make sure that we get to a softer landing. But what we need is to make sure that post the upheaval, we are in a position to ensure regulation and to make sure that people may return to the status quo, return to market competition. But yeah, it does create that loophole where you've already allowed these people to talk together and collude. How then do you unbundle them? So that's where you see the strength of the anti-competition commission, of the competition commission and other regulatory bodies. It has to come in strong there to then say, now we expect you to compete, to compete, and they would have to increase their regulatory oversight to make sure that they are looking at the business practices and they are looking at where the market concentration and market shares are keep changing hands compared to when you now see that they're now acting in concert. There isn't any changes in the markets, and you also want to see the lows, the sales, all of those things to see if they are actually diverging at the point of when the collusion comes to an end. But yeah, at some point it does become a necessity so that businesses and consumers both survive. Because if businesses act in concert and they're able to do bulk sourcing and they're able to share costs, now that allows them to offer a lower price to the consumers overall. So it's a situation that works as a win-win situation for everyone.
Sanele, thank you very much. We'll see you in a few. That was in-house economist Sanele Sibia. After the break, we speak to the Eswatini Public Procurement Regulatory Agency. Stay with us.
To all the viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Babani. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@esccom.org.za. For more information, visit www.esccom.org.za.
Welcome back. You're still watching Market View and moving on with the program. Last week, the Eswatini Public Procurement Regulatory Agency, ESPRA, trained Category A parastatal entities on the Public Procurement Data Collection Tool, a powerful step to boost compliance, transparency and accountability in government procurement. But what exactly is this tool and how will it expose hidden inefficiencies or corruption? We're now joined by Compliance Officer Mbali Mkhwanazi to break it down and further talk about the hefty penalties under the Public Procurement Act of 2011 of up to 10 million emalangeni or 10 years in jail or both for entities that do not comply with the Act. Mbali, how are you doing?
I'm well, thanks, Musila. How are you?
Good, good. Glad to have you in the studio. Let's get to it. What is the Public Procurement Data Collection Tool and what does it seek to address really?
Okay. The Public Procurement Data Collection Tool, it's a system developed by ESPPRA to standardize the procuring entities on how they capture their data and report procurement activities across the entire procurement cycle. By this, we mean from planning to tendering up to contract award. Yes, contract implementation.
Yeah.
Say yes. Also, it seeks to address transparency and public access within procurement so that the public could be able to see how the country's procurement is run. It also will help detect anomalies and risks which may occur. Yes.
The agency has already had engagements with some public entities. Tell us a bit more about that. How prepared are parastatals to comply? Are there any gaps that you may have identified?
Okay, our parastatals are actually prepared. Some already have reporting structures which are in place at the moment, and some are capacitating themselves into getting proper reporting structures for this process to go through. With gaps which we have seen, it's that some do not submit on time. This time the submission is not timely. There's constraints as some procuring entities do not have capacitating officers in place. Also, we have seen that the procuring entities, they do have qualified procuring officers now, and some have established procurement units within them. Yes.
How will this tool expose inefficiencies or corruption that currently we could say has gone unnoticed?
Okay, this is a data collection and analysis tool. Since it's a data collection and analysis tool, it collects all detailed data and procurement activities, timelines, budgets, allocations, and contract executions as to which contract is now being distributed. It also helps with analyzing the data, so that way it will reveal delays, budget overruns. It will also show irregular procurements. Yes. Also with inefficiencies and corruption, it's a standardized performance metric, and it will also help with audit traits and documentation. Yes. Through audit traits and documentations, it maintains comprehensive records. Yes, these records will help in procurement decisions and approvals, and it will also help us see all the transactions which were happening throughout the year. Yes. Also, it enhances visibilities across procurements. Through this, by capturing key data points such as procurement methods, timelines, bid participation, and contract variations.
How will you verify that the data submitted by entities is accurate and rather not manipulated in any way?
Okay, the data which will be submitted will be reviewed. It will also be checked if it's trustworthy, and also we'll see if it is what we expect. PEs will be updated on feedback with regards to the data shed. Also on that point, the structure of the tool reduces the likelihood of manipulation of data, as many fields are standardized and linked across the procurement cycle. So there's no way that you can fiddle with the data. What you've produced will be able to track and see if it's still aligned with your procurement plan. As you produce the plan, then it moves on throughout the cycle.
Mali, corruption is an everyday challenge. Fiscal irregularities, we've read reports on those. But now we're at a point where we want results. Eswatini want to see change, or rather the taxpayer wants to see change. Can you guarantee that this tool will not just be another reporting exercise without accountability?
Okay, this tool is part of a broader compliance framework. Yes, it's not just a standalone exercise. Yes, it supports activities such as monitoring, reporting, and decision making for the policy to advise to government and also for budgeting purposes. Yes, it will help generate published reports which will clearly outline the compliance rate of each entity, and eventually a national public procurement compliance performance report will be displayed. So to ensure that this is just not an exercise without real accountability. The agents will also provide continuous training to all procuring entities. Yes.
How do you see it reducing corruption risks within the procurement process?
Okay. It definitely improve transparency and traceability. Yes. It creates a record from planning to contract implementation, making it easier to identify inconsistencies, unusual patterns or deviations from standard procedures. Yes. It will also show companies show which companies are getting jobs from your works to your goods to your services. This will help that there's no repetition of a company receiving the same advantage as to you are company A, you are getting a tender on goods, services, and works at the same time. So it will be able to identify the companies and show that who are the directors of these companies. Yes, that will be visible as they have to register, so it will be there on our tool. And also, it will help with giving information for investigation purposes to Royal Police and also to Anti-Corruption Commission and also to the Eswatini Financial Intelligence Center. Yes, they'll be able to conduct investigations through information obtained from the tool. Also, the tool will also highlight reasons for contract cancellations. If maybe there is a contract cancellation, it will be highlighted on the tool.
Mali, the agency released a notice that warns of strict enforcement. As I read through it, I also understood that there will be penalties that will be enforced against entities that fail to comply. What has changed within the agency to ensure that this is it's not only a warning, but it really is a turning point in terms of enforcement?
Okay. Compliance with reporting is guided by the Public Procurement Act and regulations. So information powers on Section 11 of the Public Procurement Act of 2011 require that the agency is required to request information from procuring entities. Yes. And if not complied with, it draws to invoke Section 62 and 63 of the Public Procurement Act of 2011 on penalties. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Mbali. We'll leave it here. That was Mbali Mkhwanazi, who is the compliance officer at the Eswatini Public Procurement Regulatory Agency. We were discussing the public procurement data collection tool that has just been introduced to reduce inefficiencies and corruption, and also we tackled a bit of the regulations under the Procurement Act of 2011 that speaks to how inefficiencies will not be tolerated. Rather, compliance is key. This is Market View. The show continues after this.
Those that are in pain must forget all the problems they have. Because the things of the earth have got no answer. But the answer that we have is all morning. When I'm preaching here, I'm preaching to myself. I receive the Holy Spirit.
I declare that a turnaround is coming my way.
Turnaround is coming in my life.
Hello to all the viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Babani. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@esccom.org.za. For more information, visit www.esccom.org.za.
Welcome back for our market analysis segment. In-house economist Sanele Sibiya is on standby. Sanele, glad to have you with us again. How are global markets behaving after reports of Iran denying talks with the U.S.?
Thank you, Notile, and a good afternoon to you and the viewers yet again. So what we're seeing happening in global markets, Notile, is when U.S. markets somehow received the news coming out of, Washington, stating that they had productive talks with, the U.S. And now we're seeing this news coming out, just to counter what President Trump had said. And what we see there is the U.S. markets were a bit optimistic, taking their cues from the White House. We saw the same thing happening in Asia, where the Asian markets were actually taking their cue from the White House. But when you go back to Europe, the European markets were not so convinced, same as the South African market. So we are seeing that divergence in viewpoints. So starting with the US, we can see the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the Nasdaq Composite Index, and the S&P 500 all closed on the positive, reflecting the stance that has been taken by the White House, all averaging above 1% in terms of a percentage change. And then when you come into Europe, we are seeing divergence between the UK and the overall Eurozone. The UK is somehow, on an incremental type of level with the hopes that, the White House, what the White House said, could be trusted. And then what we're seeing again is Germany and France are somehow diverging because it is not yet clear what is actually going to happen and what is actually happening. Because when you look at what the news coming out of Tehran and the news coming out of Washington, we are seeing so much conflicting views and so much conflicting information coming out of both capitals. So markets are also showing those mixed signs in terms of who to trust and whom not to trust. And I think the European markets have somehow learned that President Trump cannot be trusted that much because he tends to, just swerve and turn around from his utterances and policy contributions. And then in terms of the Japanese markets, the Nikkei. So when the Nikkei closed, we hadn't received these news coming out of Tehran. So we're seeing just somewhat of above a 1 percentage change point increase in overall, trade in the Asian markets. The Nikkei is back on 52,000. The Hang Seng back on 25,000 above pre-COVID levels. And the Shanghai Composite Index actually taking a knock, staying below the 3,000 mark. Remember, in the past couple of weeks, they were above that 4,000 mark. But yeah, we yet to see what's going to happen when Asia opens tomorrow, and we still have this conflicting news out there in the markets. And then when you move on to South Africa, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange Index is sitting at above 110,000 in today's trade, signaling that when the news came out of Washington, we saw trades going up to the 110,300 mark. But not with the news coming out of Tehran, we saw markets just taking a dive and dipping back to the 110,000. And that's quite a gain, considering that yesterday we saw the markets reaching the 109,000 mark. But now we are back to the 110,000 mark, and hopefully as this conflict settles, we are going to see even more increases and more rises. In terms of commodities, gold is still subdued at 4,431, though showing some signs of an upward tick. And you know what what it means when we are seeing the markets coming back, cooling down due to the tensions in the Middle East, not just cooling off. So it means gold is actually going to go back to better performing when we see markets cooling off. Of course, then it's going to take away the inflationary pressures from the markets and leave markets gold still profitable. Brent crude oil taking a hike above the 100 mark after easing to the 90s when we are only looking at news coming out of Washington. But when Tehran released their statement, we've seen Brent crude coming above the 100 mark. And then in terms of the currency, we performed relatively better in the earlier hours of trading at around 16.94 against the dollar. But once the news from Tehran started coming out, we saw the exchange rate going up closer to the 17 mark. We're at 16.97 at midday. Same thing against the euro. We were at 19.67 at midday when we saw news coming out of Tehran. And I guess the Japanese yen we set at 9.34, purely because when we have this type of crisis, emerging country currencies tend to take a knock. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear. That was in-house economist Anela Spear sharing insights on the day's trade. Otherwise, this has been the Tuesday edition of Market View from myself and the crew. Thank you for staying with us. Until next time, take care.